Do you remember your earliest answers to the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? My list in my kindergarten scrapbook is awesome. Cowgirl, teacher, nurse, lawyer, doctor, mom, artist, musician, and a few others. In some ways, I do aspects of all these jobs as a wife and mom and a woman who works in ministry. But the question was a setup, and all too often I meet people who feel like adult failures because they aren't doing whatever it was they thought they should be doing. It's a well-perpetuated and powerful lie that our identity lies in our job title or the tasks that fill our days, paid or otherwise. As the children of God, we need only exist to be loved. And created in the image and likeness of God, we have the privilege of being called to participate in doing God's ongoing work in the world. The church has a word for this call, this invitation. It's vocation. Many of us think of vocations as the paths we live as adults. Married, single, religious, or priests. These ways of living are certainly a call, and it takes time and circumstance to figure out which path is yours. But as a mentor of mine, a wise religious sister, Sister Bernice cautioned me, don't forget about your daily vocation to the people and situations of your everyday life. This distinction has been a new map for me in following God where He calls. There have been some pretty big life-changing decisions and permanent commitments in my vocational story. Things like meeting my spouse, choosing him as my husband, welcoming each child, making a leap of faith and going to study theology and taking on a job in a diocese that was bigger than I had ever imagined. And then following God when He asked me to leave that job to go to my newest appointment in Catholic healthcare. But I knew what to do and how to make those big decisions precisely because I live out my daily vocation, choosing not to be rigidly defined by my titles or roles, but rather by the leading of the Spirit and the immediate needs that lie before me in every moment. Before I was married and had a family, I was invited to study hard, to build beautiful friendships, to be generous with my time and service in my community, to learn and to grow. Childhood and adolescence, teenage years and young adulthood were not primarily seasons for preparation for adulthood, but gifts in their own right. God was able to do things in me and through me that could not be accomplished in other stages of my life. I brought delight to my grandparents, taught lessons to my parents and teachers, sat in wonder under the stars. Even if I had never had the privilege of growing older, my life was full of meaning and purpose even then. By showing up for my life as it was, I could hear God's voice calling in the direction of the next right steps, even when I wanted to know where the final destination was. Sometimes I followed the next right step and other times I got it wrong. And by living my life one moment and one day at a time, the next possibilities were revealed. What am I going to do next week, next year, next decade? I still don't know, and God isn't asking me to. This became really clear to me when I was hired by my diocese at 23 to work as the director of pastoral services. I would manage a large staff of people older and wiser than I was, and the woman who had capably done the job before me was well loved. I was intimidated by Dorothy's wisdom and years of experience, and I failed miserably at trying to be the new Dorothy. I needed to be Leah, inspired by Dorothy's example and showing up to work every day, being the person that God created me to be at the service of His people and His church. When I stopped trying to be in control of what I was doing and what others perceived about me, I began to discover that God would do way more than I asked for or imagined. All I had to do was show up and say yes. The same has been true in my experience of marriage and family life. My plans for my family are often misguided. I'd like us all to show up at church on time and dressed in a certain way. I'd like us to pray a certain way and go to bed on time. But life does not happen according to my plan. When my kids cry in the night, my daily vocation involves getting up, listening to what they need, and responding the best I can. When my husband needs to pursue a dream that had almost gone dormant, I am invited to dream with him the same way that he has dreamt with me. I need to walk into church late with mismatched shoes because God asked me to care more about being kind and patient with my children than being punctual. Tomorrow and the next day and for however many days I am granted the gift of life on this earth, I want to be a more faithful follower of Jesus. I want to be kind and generous, loving and merciful when I grow up, and I want to start today. We have been deceived into a false belief that at some point we will have grown up and get what we wanted and live happily ever after. The truth is so much more fantastic than the lie. God is ever calling us to live freely in what is right now and what He is creating for the future with great joy. We don't have to wait to have what He desires for us. We can have peace and hope, freedom and fulfillment right now, if we will live satisfied with listening for His call for now, trusting that the next part of the story will be revealed to us in God's time. The most important question is, what do you want me to do now, God? And will you help me to do it faithfully? May we be people who stop asking, what am I going to do when I grow up? And start asking, where do you need me now? Lord, help us to follow you with whatever you say. Amen.